Welcome to Money Mindset from Scarcity to Abundance. If you need captioning today, please use the APAP swap card app. So, I am Tamara Kashecki.
I'm Mindy Street.
And we are the co-leads of APAP's Development Affinity Group, a year-round gathering that facilitates connection and shared learning among development professionals working in presenting and touring. Joining us to lead this session is podcaster, fundraiser, and consultant Rhea Wong.
Rhea helps nonprofits raise more money. She has deep experience with institutional, corporate, and event fundraising, and she is passionate about major individual donors and helping organizations to establish individual giving programs. She has raised millions of dollars in private philanthropy and is passionate about building the next generation of fundraising leaders. When she is not raising money for causes she loves, she can be found hosting her podcast, Nonprofit Lowdown, promoting her newest book, Get That Money, Honey, or on stage as a newbie stand-up comedian in downtown Brooklyn. I also wanted to mention I saw her at a conference in August, and so she was a recommendation of mine, so I feel like a super fan a little bit. I'm so excited she's here, so I hope you enjoy her as much as I did in August and just getting to know her from previous conversations and today. And with that being said, wait, yeah, we got to ask you a little housekeeping too. How many people do you want at a table?
Rhea's did.
Yeah, if you're at a table by yourself, there is going to be some interacting. So if you could move, I'm sorry, I know coats and bags and all that stuff.
Look, this is our shtick. If you've been to our development affinity groups, we like you to get up from your table, gather up your belongings, and stick together.
So just helping you out ahead of time, there will be some interaction. So maybe these two, maybe try to have 4 at a table if possible.
That would be awesome.
Thank you so much. And
so as you're doing that, we'd like you to remember that she likes big asks and she cannot lie. So we'd like you to give a warm, big APAP welcome to Rhea Wong.
Yay. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much. Great job. Thanks. Hi, everyone. I don't know if it's great starting out by making you do something annoying like move, but here it is. So good to be here. Welcome to New York. First time at the APAP conference. I'm excited. So before I get started, show of hands, who here is in fundraising? Oh, my people. Hello. Who is trying to get into fundraising? No one. Nobody. Any performing artists out here? Anyone not in fundraising? Okay. Or performing artists and fundraising. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, y'all. We're going to talk about money today. My favorite topic. Literally can talk about it forever. But let me introduce myself. I am a recovering executive director. I was an ED for many years here in New York, about 12 and a half years. When I left, I decided to help other people learn how to fundraise because my first day on the job, I Googled 2 things. First thing was, what does an ED do? And the second thing was, how do you fundraise? So after many, many years of trial and error, I figured it out. But I just thought, why did it take me so long to figure this out? And how can I make this easier for other people? I have a podcast called Nonprofit Lowdown. I wrote a book, Get That Money, Honey. And I am out here ready to talk about fundraising all of the time. I'm also a true crime enthusiast. Anyone else? Anyone else like to read about murder in your free time? All right, good stuff. Okay, so here's what we're going to do today in this particular session. We are going to talk about how to become aware of your relationship with money and where our money stories come from. We're going to talk about trauma and money. And we're going to talk about how to calm your nervous system. And for those of you out there that are performing artists, I'm sure some of this will feel familiar, that pre-show getting the jitters out. Now, some of you may have already conquered all of your money baggage. So if that's you, good job. Take what's here that's useful and leave the rest. For a lot of us, though, this might be the first time we've ever thought about our money stuff. So let's get going. Before I jump in, I just want to name it. When we're talking about money and talking about our orientation to money, I am not pretending that things like systemic racism and white supremacy and transphobia and xenophobia and homophobia don't exist in the world. There are systems of oppression, and we have to operate within what exists in the world. So what I found is that we can hold two things to be true at the same time. We have to operate within the matrix, as I call it, and we disrupt the matrix at the same time. So as we're going through this, again, take what is useful for you and leave the rest. Let's talk about why your money mindset is critical to your fundraising success. So here's some truths. 80%, if not more, of your success in fundraising will have to do with your brain. And your brain is the most effective tool that you have in your toolkit. And I think that it is very difficult to be an effective fundraiser until you examine the stuff that you bring to the table about money, your own trauma, your own blocks, your own stories. So, quick question. What comes up for you when I say fundraising? This is kind of interactive. We're a smallish group. Just throw up a hand. I'd love to say, what comes up for you when I say fundraising? Challenge. Okay. What else? Nausea. Woo! Okay. What else? Relationships. Party. Oh, I like that. Party. What else? All right, what emotions are coming up for folks? Nausea is one, maybe that's like some dread. What else is coming up? Anxiety, stress, okay. Excitement, I like that too. Okay, so consulting fee? So it sounds like a lot of us have lots of feelings about money, right? So let's talk about this. The truth of the matter is that there is more than enough money in the world to fund your work. Last year, Americans, and this is just in the US, gave almost $600 billion with a B to philanthropic organizations. We have seen unprecedented numbers of DAFs, donor-advised funds, and family foundations being opened. So is it a question of not enough money in the world? I mean, here we are in New York City, one of the richest cities in the richest country in human history. Am I wrong? No? Yeah. There's a lot out there. There's abundance everywhere. Now, distribution might be a problem, but the sheer volume is not. Are you with me so far? Okay. So if you are experiencing some frustration, maybe you're not getting the outcomes that you want, if you want different results, we're going to have different stories. So I want to talk about your brain for a second. I'll try not to geek out too much about brain stuff, but I kind of love talking about the brain. So you have this thing inside your skull, this little spongy muscle, and there's a part of your brain called the amygdala. Does anyone know what an amygdala is? There's a definition there, so if you can read, you'll see it. Anyone know what an amygdala? Yeah, what's an amygdala? Yes, exactly. So your amygdala is the most primitive part of your brain. It's actually like located right here. It is responsible for fight, flight, or freeze. So back in the day when we were all cave people walking around the world, the amygdala was really great because when saber-toothed tigers came at us, we knew how to react, right? If something is coming at me that is threatening, I don't have time to sit and like contemplate, like, what should I do about this? It's like run, fight, or freeze. Now, here's the challenge. Our brains, as smart as they are, have not really evolved fast enough and upgraded to life in 2024. I almost said 2023. 2024. And yet, because we're working with old hardware, like the hardware and the software have not been upgraded, we often perceive things that are a threat to us, and it sets off our amygdala, right? So we receive information through our eyes, ears, nose, all of this part and our senses, and our brain very quickly processes, is this a threat? Then, not to get too geeky about it, our hypothalamus starts pumping. Our hypothalamus pumps out peptides throughout our body into our cells, and it creates what we call an emotion. Are you with me so far? Okay. So the thing about the amygdala is because we've not upgraded, we often perceive things that are a threat to us that are not actually a threat. And especially living in New York City, You get a lot of things that you perceive as a threat. My coffee is late. This cab almost hit me. I guess a cab hitting you would actually be a threat to your person. But we perceive a lot of threats when maybe they are actually not an actual physical threat to our body. The issue is when our amygdala is always firing off, our bodies are in a high state of panic and anxiety all of the time. I think this is particularly true post-pandemic, right? Is anyone else feeling some anxiety after the pandemic? Yeah? Yeah. So our bodies are literally holding onto the anxiety that our peptides are pulsing out. Now, the brain is only ever in one of two modes. So here's the first mode, your worldview. There's not enough out there for me. That's time, resources, community, etc. The world is a threatening place, and people will try to take advantage. People are who they are, and they don't really change, and life happens to me and not for me. That is what we call survival. This is when your amygdala is in high gear, when you get into either or thinking, when it's black or white. And so this is relevant because if we are in a survival state as we're fundraising, our bodies are reacting in a stress mode, right? We are literally telling our bodies to fight, flight, or freeze. Now, what's the opposite of that? That there's more than enough out there for me. The world is basically a friendly place. People can grow and change, growth mindset for any of the who follow Carol Dweck. And then life happens for me, and I have control over my circumstances. This is called executive mode. So remember, your brain is either survival or executive. Executive mode is when your prefrontal cortex, so this big part behind your forehead, this is a part that's really big in humans, is in the flow state. Has anyone ever been in the zone or in the flow state? Yeah? When like time just flies by and you're like, oh, I'm just like doing the thing. That's when you're in executive mode. That's where generosity lives. That's where community lives. That is where the good stuff happens. Now, fun fact, how much of a percentage on average do you think most people spend in survival mode? All right, let's do a fun survey. Raise your hand if you think it's 10%. 20%? 30%? 40? We got 40? 50? 60? 70? 80? Ooh, got some anxious people. 90? All right, 100? Anyone for 100? No. Obviously, we're not in survival mode all the time, but on average, it's about 70%. I would say here in New York City, it's probably like 90%. So I don't know where they got their information. But you have experienced this most likely when you've encountered somebody who has an outsized emotional reaction to what you think is a fairly benign stimulus, right? Like when people are just freaking out. It's because they're operating from survival mode. They're operating with their amygdala going nuts, and they are believing that they are being threatened. Okay, with me so far? Yeah? Okay, cool. So we get ourselves into survival mode when we have a scarcity mindset, because remember, it is the belief that there is not enough out there for me, what I want is not available to me, I can't have what I want, and I will never be successful, and I don't belong. That's a big trigger for folks. I don't belong here. So how do I know if I have scarcity mindset? This is a part where we like hold hands together. There's no judgment. We love each other. I love you all. But it's a moment of truth. So I don't know if you can read that. These are some of my favorite things that I've heard in the nonprofit world to signify maybe there's some scarcity here. One, we can't afford that. And I say that in a knee-jerk reaction, like automatically. If I propose something, no, we can't afford that. Let's not add fundraising staff until we have the money. We can only break even. There just aren't enough hours in the day, right? So there's money scarcity, there's also time scarcity. We can't raise money because X, Y, Z. This is my favorite. We can't raise money because of the war in Ukraine. We can't raise money because of the pandemic. We can't raise money because of the situation in Gaza. We can't raise money because it's a Thursday, right? We don't know any rich people. Must be nice. So must be nice is comparison. Comparison is the thief of joy. I used to say must be nice, and it was usually related to other nonprofits. Oh, must be nice that they get that nice office space. Must be nice they have the nice pencils. Anyone been there? And then finally, you fill your day with tasks that you know are not moving the needle to avoid looking at the budget or fundraising. Real talk, y'all, no judgment. Raise your hand if you have heard any of these things said in your nonprofit. Okay? I'm actually really shocked if there are people who don't raise their hand. Raise your hand if you have said any of these things. Okay. We're going on a journey, y'all. Okay, so here's some common money stories. Obviously, there are a lot, but these are some of the most common ones that I hear. Story 1, money doesn't grow on trees. Story 2, time is money. Money is hard to come by. Takes money to make money. Easy come, easy go. I don't care about the money, right? A lot of people, especially artists and nonprofit folks, I do it for a bigger cause. I don't care about the money. Money corrupts you. Money is the root of all evil. People with money are different. They're better, they're worse, they're meaner, they're kinder. They must have done something bad to get that money. Suffering is noble, right? When I was in the ED, I would pride myself well, I worked 100 hours this week and I slept 2 hours and I haven't even paused to go pee. What a good ED I am. I didn't realize that there were no medals given for suffering. But if there were, I would have a gold medal. And then finally, and this might be true for you, somehow the starving artists. Right? If I'm suffering and I have no money, I'm somehow a better, more authentic artist. Okay, raise your hand if any of these stories ring true for you. Gold medal for suffering? I know. So that's a tough Olympics to be part of, you know what I mean? What I'm suggesting, again, I'm not coming from a place of judgment. I'm simply saying, what stories are there and are they serving you? You're grown people, you do what you want. If you want to hold on to these stories, then be my guest. I'm simply saying, let's shed a light on some of these stories, and then you get to decide as grown people whether or not this is a story that you want to keep for yourself. So then the question might be, okay, Rhea, so where does scarcity thinking come from? Spoiler alert, it's your family. No, in all seriousness, there are sort of 4 ways in which we can think about scarcity and trauma, actually. So a lot of times, especially in our capitalistic society, there's a story that if you're not doing well financially, it's your own fault, right? It's the choices that you've made. But the truth is, we didn't all just hatch on the planet yesterday. We all came from somewhere. So there are 4 main ways in which money and trauma are intertwined. The first is generational trauma and scarcity. So there's a branch of genetics called epigenetics, where essentially you are inheriting trauma in your DNA. So one example that they had is that descendants of Holocaust survivors actually experience higher levels of anxiety and health problems associated with it, even though they themselves did not go through the Holocaust. They had inherited that trauma through their DNA. The same is true, perhaps, of folks who've descended from enslaved peoples. The same might be true of folks who've experienced other trauma in their family line. The next is relational trauma. So if you have caretakers or parents who really integrated a story of scarcity in you, it's easy to play that back over and over again. And by the way, let me take a step back. When we say beliefs are just things that we think again and again and again. It doesn't necessarily make it true. It's just a belief that we have. The third is societal trauma. So as I mentioned before at the beginning, we live in a society that is deeply unjust, right? There is racism. There is redlining. There are ways in which the people that are among us some people are oppressed. And then the last is systemic trauma. So when we think about social trauma and how that plays out in policy, like redlining, like predatory lending practices, all of that is real, right? And all of it impacts us. The message here is that you are not broken. The strategies that you have, the beliefs that you have, are defenses that you've developed in a dysfunctional environment. One of my favorite philosophers is Krishnamurti. It is no measure of health to be well-adjusted to a profoundly sick society. But in this session, I hope that we can start to do a little bit of healing and a little bit of uncovering of what these stories might be for you. I want to tell a little story. So I grew up in San Francisco in the 80s and 90s, and then as now, there are lots of unhoused people who live on the streets. I grew up in the height of the AIDS and crack epidemics in San Francisco. And so one day I was walking down the street with my dad. I was like 8 years old. And there was a homeless man with a sign that said, "Homeless, please help." And I dug into my pocket and I gave him a quarter, right? Because I'm 8 years old and I learned from Sesame Street that it's good to give and share. And my father whipped around and he said, "Oh, you're so rich now, you can just give money away." And I felt this shame in my body and I didn't know why. And many, many years later, I realized that in my family, the story was because my grandparents had immigrated from China with nothing, that money in my family meant stability and security. And that by giving this quarter away, in my father's mind, I was giving away my family's stability. Fast forward to being a fundraiser. I never loved it. In fact, I hated it. In fact, I was pretty good at it, but I just never enjoyed it. And it wasn't until I started to uncover my own stories about why that might be. And I remembered this moment with my father. And what had happened for me was subconsciously, I was believing that by asking someone to donate to a cause, that I was asking them to experience the same shame that I had experienced as an 8-year-old. And so that's just one example of how the story of money blocked me from being the fundraiser I wanted to be. Oh, I'm going to tell you a story about sand fleas. Okay, then we're going to have a little interaction. So back in the 60s, scientists took a bunch of fleas, sand fleas, and they put them in a jar. And normally sand fleas would just jump out of the jar. But what they did is they put a lid on the jar and they left the jar alone for 3 days. They came back, they took the lid off the jar, and what they learned was that the sand fleas only jumped up to where the lid of the jar had been, but no further. But the crazier part of it was that all of the sand flea babies only jumped up to where the lid had been and no further. So effectively, they had trapped generations of sand fleas in this jar with a lid that had been on for 3 days. So what does that tell us? It tells us that we have inherited these stories. So where did we learn about money? For me, I learned about money from my parents. They learned about money from their parents. Well, their parents were immigrants from China who grew up in the Depression. So the ways in which money was thought of by my grandparents is not the same way that money acts in 2024, but I had accepted that story. So here comes the interactive part of the group. So again, if this is not comfortable to you, please do not feel forced to do any of it, but I think it's just a fun exploration of our stories. What did you hear in your family growing up? So in my family, I heard, money doesn't grow on trees. Who do you think we are, the Rockefellers? What did they model for me? What did I see growing up? In my family, my parents were very, very frugal, and then ever so often my father would splurge on like a very random thing. What emotions do I have? So the way that the brain works is the hippocampus encodes memories that are associated with strong emotions. In my family, the worst fights I ever saw my parents get into were about money. And so, of course, I had a negative association with money. And then I talked a little bit about how the past affected my personal relationship, and then how those feelings affected my fundraising. So you're not going to get to all of the questions, but what I would like to do is maybe give you 10 minutes. Maybe you could pair up groups of, let's do groups of 2 or 3, and then we'll give each person 5 minutes and I'll call out time. Sound good? Okay, go forth. And don't be shy about introducing yourselves. We're all friends here. How's it going? Oh. I'm just going to circulate. All right, I'll give you all 2 more minutes. So if you haven't switched yet, please switch. Hello. No worries. Do you want to jump in? We're just doing a little discussion period about money. Prompt questions are on the. Actually, here's a new. Here, come this way. Have a seat. All right. 47 seconds, y'all. I know. You always leave them wanting more, you know? Is there any way to get a microphone for folks? Can we get a roving microphone or no? Oh, okay. Let me see. All right, friends. I totally lied, and I said I would give you 10 minutes, but I lied. I'm giving you 5 because I'm on the clock. Time scarcity. All right, y'all. Welcome back. I know, this is such an interesting topic. Anybody have any insights to share? Any aha moments? Anyone? Yeah. What? Please share. You also be talking to my lav mic because I don't have a microphone, but please. Stand up. What's your name?
Okay. My name is Judy Penuel, and this is not about where I am now, but when I used to do some fundraising, I had a very wealthy philanthropic gentleman that spoke to us one time, and he said, when you come in and ask for money, don't ask for a small amount. He said, you insult the person and make them think they can't afford anymore. He said, ask for a lot. He said, because that way you validate them, make them think, wow, they must think I'm really wealthy, and then they can give whatever they want. I always thought just the opposite. Be careful how much you ask for. Don't ask for too much. And he told me to ask for the moon.
I love that. Thank you, Judy. I hope that inspires y'all. Anyone else? Any other aha moments? Yeah. Rhea. Yes. Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm gonna have to. Great.
My name is Ronnie, and I guess I had an aha moment just relating to your story because my mother is a Japanese immigrant from Okinawa, and she grew up very humbly. She had to take water from a well just to bathe herself, and I realized that I am totally in a scarcity mindset with money, and even at my mom's house, she saves plastic bags and chopsticks. She has like a whole box.
Are we related?
Yeah, and I guess the aha moment is realizing it, but I'm still waiting to figure out what's the next step.
We'll get there, friend. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? All right, I think we'll have like 2 more. Let me get to the other side of the room. Hold on. I think Tony Robbins has people do this for him. Here you go. Stand up. What's your name?
Hi, my name's Sarah. We were just talking what you said about asking for money. Oh, now I'm like, everyone's staring at me and I don't know how to talk.
Nothing but love here.
Something you said, like the asking, essentially for people to destabilize themselves like that, because if that's how you felt or something. I'm probably misquoting you. That's what I heard. That really resonated with me, and something that we were talking about is that for me, there were times when like my parents needed help from other people and they borrowed money from their parents or borrowed money in some way. And I think they're always really ashamed of that. And so I never wanted to ask for help. And asking for money meant asking for help, and asking for help meant a sign of weakness.
Oh.
And so if I ever ask, sometimes I carry that, like asking for money sometimes feels like I'm assuming, like even though I know they're giving to what we do and they're supporting, somehow I feel like afraid that I'm actually asking them to do something they don't want to do and they feel like they are obligated to do out of a sense of solidarity that feels like maybe not equitable or something. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a sense of shame, that there's some feeling like I'm a burden, you know, that they're obligated. Thank you, Sarah. All right, last one, and then we got to keep going on this train. I'm going to give you some solutions.
Awesome. I was just kind of sharing, like we were thinking here. It was exactly like the questions on the board and what she was talking about. Like we're talking, and I don't know if it's every family, but I know like a lot of minority families and come from minority family. Was the saving the bags thing. Like literally, my mom still saves bags. We still save bags. I don't even what we do with them, you know. But they're like under the sink, or under the sink. There's like 100 bags, you know. Oh, yeah, someone saves something, or you know, we save chopsticks, too. But we don't eat that much, you know, Asian food, but we still save the stuff. But I think I would listen to like some, you know, podcasters like Rhea, and I would listen, and then I think one of my aha moment was when it was a common thing when artists or people would, you know, in the arts especially would say, I'm not doing it for the money, I'm not doing it for the money. And the mind really, whenever you say, I'm not doing it for the money, you get no money. You know what I mean? So you get what you ask for. And so I took the advice, and I don't know if it was Jay Shetty or someone who was it would say, you wake up the next morning and say, you know, I'm an artist and I should make, you know, a fair pay for my work. I'm worth what I'm here to do. And so I started doing that. And so I started waking up every morning doing that, and just kind of started like rethinking and then I started. I'd always kind of enjoyed fundraising, but even more so, I could go in with, you know, different people in Congress and, you know, with a mayor, with a governor, and sit down and say, this is what I need. And I wouldn't necessarily, I'd say this is what I have, you know, estimated the project to cost. And it was crazy, just like the amount of funds that could be raised doing literally just asking for what you need because you thought it was worth it. So that was my story.
Yeah, I love that. Also, round of applause for all the folks who shared. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Write this down, y'all. You get what you tolerate. You get what you tolerate. Right? If we do not tolerate being underpaid, if we do not tolerate being disrespected, if we do not tolerate bad behavior from donors, we will not continue to get it. Okay, I'm going to jump back on stage. It may be inelegant, but here it is. All right, thank you. So, let me turn this off. Oh. Okay. All right, so we've unpacked all this stuff. There are stories that may or may not serve us. Jesus, I think you gave us a beautiful example of what is possible. Judy, I love what you said about ask big, right? You would otherwise, because I think we put our stories onto other people. So let me ask a different question. Now that we've uncovered the stories, there's shine a little bit of light on it, how might you act differently in your life without these beliefs? Thought experiment. How might you act differently if you didn't have a story about money that it was an imposition on people, or if it wasn't a shameful thing? How might you act differently if you believed that there was more than enough out there for you? Any thoughts? Any reaction to that? Yeah, please, right here in front. Here, hold on. We're gonna get you a mic. I don't even know why I'm on stage. I actually prefer being. There you go.
I just feel, I don't know, I just have this feeling that I would just be extremely successful if I didn't have everything from childhood. And, you know, from my mom's side, my dad's side, the way things happen, how I was raised as an adult versus as a child. I just feel that I would be where I've always wanted to be without any issue.
I love that. Thank you. So you might be at a different place if you didn't carry these heavy stories with you, right? I do meditation every morning, and one of my recent meditations was the things that weigh you down are your traumas, and if you can cut cut the ties, you can fly. All right, I saw another hand here. Yeah, how might you be different? Come on up. I think the mic is set up here. Sorry, we're just making stuff up as we go. Please.
Hi. I can't actually get this back up. There we go. So I just think it's really interesting because when I got into fundraising, I had a lot of people say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're gonna like have a job where you have to literally ask people for money." And I thought that was really strange because in my head I'm like, "But aren't we all asking for money? Like, don't we all? That's what we do. Like in every profession, aren't we all asking for money essentially, kind of at the common denominator?" So I just thought that was very interesting. I'm not really answering your question, but I just thought to kind of like, add a different perspective. Like it's not a profession about asking for money. We all have to pay the bills and ask for money. I don't know. That's my perspective.
Thank you. I love that. So actually, I had a thought the other day. I was at a museum. I was walking through the museum. I was like, oh, it's so beautiful, all the beautiful art, all the things. And then it occurred to me, none of this, none of the art, none of the things that you all produce in the world is possible without money, right? If you have a mission and you have a purpose, you have to be able to pay for it. And so in a sense, I was like, wait, so if fundraisers are in part responsible for creating all of the wonderful things and the wonderful art and the clean oceans and the kids going to school and babies getting fed, if that's in fact true, then isn't fundraising a creative act? And in a sense, isn't creativity a spiritual act? And so fundraising is actually spirituality. Another thing that I want to talk about is often as fundraisers, we tie our self-worth to the outcome, right? If I get the gift, I'm a good fundraiser. If I don't get the gift, I'm a bad fundraiser. What if you were just worthy no matter what? And by the way, just FYI, and I've tried this, I am not able to make people do what I want them to do by the sheer power of my mind. I've tried, and neither are you. Whether or not someone says yes to you is not up to you. You literally do not control their minds. What you can control are all of the things that within your realm of control. Did I set it up the right way? Did I develop the relationship? Was this the right ask for them? Did I get them excited about the program? Did I create and present the opportunity for them to do something great in their lives? Yes. If yes, then you can pat yourself on the back and say, I did a good job. Has nothing to do with your self-worth. Is this resonating with anyone? Yes? Yeah? Okay. Can I get an amen? Okay, so let's talk about beliefs. Why do we have beliefs? Why do we believe the things that we believe? A couple things. It keeps us connected to an identity. So in our family of origin, for example, in my family, money doesn't grow on trees. Well, if I believed that, then I could still be in the family. Because as humans, we want to belong, right? We want to be part of a tribe. And if I somehow didn't have a belief that money is hard to come by and money is scarce, all of a sudden I'm on the outside. Oh, so Rhea's acting like she's too big for her britches. Who does she think she is, right? So it keeps us tied to an identity. We talked about how it's connected to trauma. It's a trauma survival strategy. It's also sometimes connected to my own sense of self. So what I mean by that is, here, I'm gonna tell a story. There was a tiger in the DC Zoo many, many years ago by the name of Raja. It was a beautiful white tiger. And beautiful Raja was stuck in this tiny little cage where it just paced back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So they created this beautiful big enclosure for Raja to run around in. And the day of the big opening, they lowered Raja's cage into the enclosure. It was gorgeous. It was like an acre. Raja could frolic. They opened the door, and what do you think happened? Nothing. Raja stayed right there. Raja, to the end of his days, kept pacing back and forth. And I use that as an analogy because our brains like safety, because when we were cave people, safety meant survival. Even if we're miserable, even if that thing that is familiar to us is not serving us, we will continue to hold on to that thing because certainty is better than uncertainty. Certainty is better than happiness. Certainty is better than satisfaction. So then the question is, okay, so what do I do about it, Rhea? It's all great. What do I do about it? So remember the amygdala slide. I have I'm keeping an eye on time. Remember the amygdala side when our bodies are in a hyper state of arousal or we're in a frozen state. Has anyone ever procrastinated? I mean, I never do, right? Anyone procrastinating? You're like watching Netflix instead of doing the thing you know you should be doing? Yeah, right? Like playing video games or like, I'm like, you know what? My sock drawer could really use rearranging right now. That's because I'm in the fight mode. Like I'm fleeing from the thing that I know I should be doing. So here's a model for us. When we are within what we call a window of tolerance, when our nervous system is actually calm, that's when we can be effective. That's when we move things forward. That's when we are able to be in that executive state. When we experience things that get us agitated, right, that activate our nervous system, we are either in hyperarousal, we're anxious and we're stressed and our emotions are kind of revved up, or we can go catatonic, right? We can be like, all right, I'm just gonna lay on the couch and not do anything. And so the question is, when things are coming up for us that really start triggering our money stories, maybe there's a donor who didn't give you a yes, and it's then setting off all these stories about, oh God, I'm a bad fundraiser, I'm not good enough, I'm gonna lose my job, things are like, it puts me in this arousal state. There are a couple things that we can do. We can pause, right? So often, what we'll notice is when I'm in a hyper-aroused state, am I talking fast? Am I reacting fast? Yeah? We take a breath, we pause. The other thing that we can do is really key into our body. So there's some really interesting research about the body remembers trauma. And our body often, like, has anyone ever gotten like a feeling in the pit of your stomach about something? Or like you meet someone and you're just just there's something about them just like, I don't like, they don't smell right to me, right? Our body is far more intelligent than we give it credit for. So take a moment when you're feeling in an anxious state and say, where am I feeling it in my body? I am noticing, and you can use these words, so I am noticing that something in me is feeling anxious. I am noticing that something in me is feeling stressed. I am noticing that something in me is feeling tense. And the noticing and the releasing will help you to calm your nervous system. And it's really important, the verbiage here is important. I feel versus I am. Because I am is an identity statement, I feel is an emotion, and emotions pass. There's Vu breath, which, anyone here practice yoga? Yeah? You know the chanting that you do? It actually stimulates your vagus nerve. So there's a reason why they do it. Your diaphragm vibrates, and your vagus nerve is what controls your nervous system. There's box breathing. So the Navy SEALs teach this. You breathe in, and it sounds so simple, but you breathe in for 4 counts, you hold for 4 counts, you breathe out for 4 counts, and you hold for 4 counts. And you do this for 3 rounds, and it actually lowers your blood pressure and lowers your heart rate. You can visualize. So oftentimes, anyone here, well, I know a lot of you are performers, but anyone here an athlete or performer, athletes? What is the role of visualization in performance? Like, what's that? See it to be it. I love that, right? So you see in your mind's eye, this is how it's going to be. So when you're going in for an ask, visualize for yourself, how's it going to go, right? Who am I going to be? How am I going to present? What's it going to look like when I go into the ask? Havening, that's one other, this is a fun, interesting thing. You can do like this with your hands, like you're putting on hand cream. And what that does is it helps you to get back into your body. Because oftentimes what happens is that when our brains are going crazy, we leave our bodies, right? We almost like black out and we're just living in our heads. But to come back to your body and really feel the feelings of havening. And the final thing is notice where your attention goes. So where your attention goes, the energy flows and results show. And what I mean by that is our brains are very good at catastrophizing, right? I'm very good at telling you all the 10 things that went wrong in my day today, all the 10 ways in which we should have done that campaign better. But I don't necessarily do a good job of telling you the 10 things that went right. And so if we can retrain our neural pathways to notice the things that are going right, that is where our energy flows and we fuel ourselves with that positivity. Okay, final bit of business. You've heard me now for an hour. I hope I haven't bored you. But if you want to hear more of me, I have a podcast. I have a free newsletter. I do free weekly webinars. And as a special gift to y'all, I have a free digital copy of my book. So if you go to that QR code and follow me on LinkedIn, you will get a copy of my book, Get That Money, Honey. So that is it for me. Thank you so much. And I think I might have 2 minutes for questions, so if anyone has any questions. No questions. I'm so glad I've answered all the questions. Yeah. Yeah, so I first had to become aware of it, right? And the second thing is I had to tell myself a different story. So this is actually a fun fact. I was deep in this scarcity mindset, and I had a woman that I met who I wanted to be on my board. Her name is Liz Sherman, lives here in New York City. She was like, you know, tough as nails, Wall Street in the 80s kind of a lady. Anyway, we went out to lunch one day, and I asked her if she would consider being on my board, and she said, I might consider it. Send me your budget first. Okay, fair enough. Send her my budget. She calls me 3 days later and she said, Rhea, I have some questions about your budget. And I was like, oh God, I'm like sweating, right? She goes, is it true here that your board only gives, at the time they were giving $30,000 collectively? And I said, yes, that's true. And she said, well, that's unacceptable to me. Any board that I'm on, the board has to be giving significantly to the operating budget. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm writing you a check for $50,000 as a challenge to the rest of the board to give 50, and if they do that, I'll throw in another 50. Check is in the mail. Click. And I was like, what just happened? What just happened, right? So I'm like looking at this check. I'm 28 years old, biggest check I've ever held in my hand. And I started to question my own reality. Wait, what if the way I think about money is not the way that other people think about money? What if there are people in this world who want and believe that giving is an honor and a privilege? And then I started noticing, right? So I was training my brain to be like, okay, so let me challenge my assumption of the world. Can I, if I believe that people are not generous and giving is a burden, can I also notice instances where the opposite is true? And again, it's training your brain. I started to see more and more of it. And then what happens is your energy changes about it. So, Bronnie, fun fact. I'm married, but there was a time I was single, and there would be moments where I couldn't catch a date to save my life, right? Anyone ever go through a dry spell? Of course not. You go, oh, gorgeous, beautiful people. I would go through dry spells, couldn't catch a date to save my life. Then when I would get into a relationship, everyone wanted my number. And I was like, where were you like 2 months ago? And the reason was I realized I was bringing a different kind of energy. I like to call it BDE, big donor energy. You're just like, hey, I'm here. I'm offering you an opportunity to do this amazing thing with me. You could take it or leave it. If you don't want it, that's fine. There are a whole bunch of people out there in the world. And you just have to believe that there are a bunch of people out there in the world who are excited about the thing that you're doing. There are ways to trick your brain. The other thing I'd like to do is just imagine that there's a big pile of money in the world somewhere with your name on it, and your job is just to find it. How might you act differently if that was a belief you had? You'd be fearless, right? You're like, I just need to find that money. I just need to, it's like a game almost. It's like, all right, I don't know where it is, but let's go find it. So, Bronnie, I don't know if that helped. Did that help? Okay. I think I'm out of time, y'all, but come, I'm going to be hanging out. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be with you.